Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
Introducing Home Care Plus, a new subscription service from Lowe's that helps make life easier by giving members a hand with home maintenance. Let Lowe's tackle the tasks you keep meaning to do, like electric dryer vent cleaning, replacing hard-to-reach light bulbs, and more. Subscribe to Home Care Plus for just $99 a year and consider your to-do list done. Members get more at Lowe's. Available in select zip codes only. Cancel anytime. Non-refundable fee. Product purchase required. Terms and service restrictions apply. Details at Lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
The Roger Stone Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You know, I've been in Washington, D.C. A lot recently, and recently I had to go at last notice. I went online to get a hotel room. The only thing available was the Watergate Hotel, and the rate wasn't so bad, so I booked it, and I got in late that night, and the clerk behind the check-in desk said to me, have you ever been in the hotel before? And the older clerk behind the desk started laughing hysterically. Then they give you your card, you know, the key card to open your door, and it says on it, no need to break in. I thought that was pretty funny. All right. I often say that David Schoen, a civil rights, criminal and civil defense lawyer, civil liberties lawyer out of Alabama, is the smartest lawyer I know, but the only other guy I know who'd be in the running, in my view, is my next guest, Jeff Clark. I've known Jeff Clark, who is a graduate of Harvard University, got his M.A. at the University of Delaware, and a law degree from Georgetown's University Law Center, way back to his days as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Department of Justice's Environment and National Resources Division. He's also had a distinguished career in private practice. He went on to be appointed and confirmed by the U.S. Senate for the position of Assistant Attorney General for ENRD. More recently, he has represented and worked for the government and the Trump administration at the Office of Management and Budget, where he recently resigned to return to private practice. But he is an expert in regulatory, appellate, and constitutional law, and literally one of the smartest and finest men I've ever known, and I'm delighted to have him. Jeff, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Well, Roger, thanks for having me, and that little anecdote about the Watergate Hotel is pretty funny, I agree.
Yeah, you have to be of a certain age to get it, I guess, but so it's kind of funny. They have the break-in room, I guess the room that Hunt and Liddy and others were using as a staging area, and they have it all outfitted with pictures and stuff like that. So for a small fee, they'll do a tour. So I went through it with the clerk, and they have the pictures of all of the 8 burglars, and I just went through. I said, that CIA, 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 former FBI G. Gordon Liddy being fooled by the CIA. Anyway, let's get to more important matters, not of history. I want to focus for a minute on the process of selecting a new U.S. Attorney General. It's a cabinet-ranked position. It requires Senate confirmation. The president, by terminating Pam Bondi, who I actually think quite highly of, essentially you now have an acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche. But to select a permanent Attorney General, what's the process?
So the process under Article 2 of the Constitution is that the president nominates someone, and then the Senate looks at that nomination, gives advice and consent, and hopefully it's consent, and then that officer is confirmed and becomes the principal officer of the Justice Department.
I guess my question is a presidential nomination like this also subject to the filibuster rule, where you would need 60 votes to move the nomination to the floor for a vote?
Yes. So, we don't have real filibusters anymore. You know that there's kind of a lot of discussion about, returning to something like that in order to get the Save America Act passed. But here, in terms of nominations, since 2019, the rule has been that for an appointment of this significance under Senate Rule 22 in Roman numerals, that the nominee can be debated for up to 30 hours. So the steps in the process are first, the president sends over the nomination paperwork. The Senate reviews it. There's a questionnaire that the nominee has to fill out, and there's, behind-the-scenes prep. Then the Senate Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing with the nominee where they would pose questions from both sides, 5-minute limit for each member. And then after that hearing is concluded, there are so-called QFers, questions for the record, which the nominee answers in writing. And then ultimately they get put on a so-called Senate Judiciary Committee business meeting. And the issue is, will they get voted out of committee or not? Once they get voted out of committee, the nominee then goes to the floor, and the first obstacle, as you're pointing out, is to pass the 60-vote cloture threshold. So when I was nominated back in 2017, I got my hearing in 2017 in front of the Judiciary Committee, but I did not get on the floor and through both cloture and then, the up or down vote on confirmation or not until October of 2018. Hopefully there won't be anything like that kind of delay for the new Attorney General nominee here. But, there obviously could be delays. And then once it comes to the floor, assuming you can get past the 60 vote, threshold, you have this 30 hours of potential debate, and then there's an up or down, real vote on does the person get confirmed or not. That's the process.
The first stop seems to be the committee. Tom Tillis, a stain on the U.S. Senate from North Carolina, a man who's not running for re-election because he knows he would be ignominiously defeated in the Republican primary, who's betrayed President Trump on virtually every major issue, has already said that if the president's nominee does not agree that January 6th was worse than Pearl Harbor, worse than World War II, worse than the Alamo, then he's not voting for them. I haven't looked at the rest of the committee, but if there are Republicans like Lisa Murkowski, who, by the way, was not elected as a Republican, you could have issues in committee. And then the problem here is the rules don't matter anymore. When Joe Biden was president, when he appointed a U.S. attorney in a state with 2 Republican senators, those senators, if the U.S. attorney nominee was an honest person, did not withhold the so-called blue slip, and we allowed them to have their U.S. attorneys. They don't do that with Donald Trump. They don't need any reason. The 2 senators from New York will not support any nominee for Donald Trump for the Southern District of New York position as U.S. attorney, or the Eastern District. It is only in states like Florida, where you have 2 Republican senators, we've been able to get our nominees confirmed. So they play by no rules. They're particularly unfond of the Constitution, generally speaking. But I guess a lot of this depends on who the nominee is. A lot of speculation about that. We're going to talk about that later in the show because I'm more interested in some other big picture issues. I was shocked this past week when Richard Leone, who's the senior judge in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, halted the construction of the ballroom that falls within the presidential complex, as it were, between the White House and the old executive office building, now called the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, after one of our very greatest presidents. And he's a Republican. He was originally appointed by George W. Bush, so we know what kind of Republican he is. But it's interesting. A very prominent attorney, who shall be named blameless, sent me a note and said, Judge Leon, who just ruled on the ballroom case, is one of the most incompetent and worst judges I've ever appeared before. He knew nothing about the law in my case and was extremely defensive when I moved to recuse him over an extraordinary conflict of interest. The 6 other lawyers in the case who had been his personal lawyer when he had been sued for malpractice when he became a judge, one of those 6. The lawyers replaced in the case knew about the conflict, but they were actually afraid to bring it up, so they pretended like they didn't raise it. This lawyer says he's a man of no ethics and no ability. Republicans who thought he was going to be a fair judge have learned otherwise. What I'm more focused on whether Judge Leon has Leon perhaps has the authority to stop the construction of the ballroom.
So, Roger, look, I don't. Let me say this: it is Judge Leon, first of all, in terms of the pronunciation, okay. Richard Leon. And, I've had clerks of his actually work for me at my prior law firm. And in general, as an active officer of the court, I try not to speak ill of judges, but to criticize the logic of their decisions, which I'm going to do here, I think, in state.
Yeah, let me make clear. On the Roger Stone Show, when I say my opinion, that's my opinion only. You're not responsible for my opinions. You have your own views, so no one should blame you for my strong feelings on a particular issue. I think that should be pretty clear. Yeah. And you have not denigrated any member of the bench. So,
right. So look, but I do disagree with this decision. So what's happened? There's an entity called the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They have sued the president and other executive branch officers to try to stop construction of the ballroom and all of the ancillary projects related to that, which clearly include national security projects, hardening the facilities. There are military installations going in. The president was quite perturbed that he had to actually let the cat out of the bag on that to some degree. There have been filings under seal in the district court in front of Judge Leon about what those military installations involve, fortifying against drone attacks, explosives, bulletproofing, all those kinds of things. And it's clearly, there's an underground component that the public can't see that's going on. And, this is a serious matter. And as I understand it, Judge Leon, even though the offer was given to him, hasn't even taken a tour of the site to look at what's going on there. He's just ruling on the papers here. And, I think that his injunction, first of all, I have lots of points against it, but his injunction is internally contradictory because it basically says that the ballroom has to stop, but that any security purpose, building activities can continue. Well, at this point, the whole complex, as it's being revamped, revised, and rebuilt, it's all a security process. So the idea of here, trying to distinguish between a ballroom, which, if you just use that word, sounds like it's, for social functions, and these military installations and the like that we're talking about, and secret details about that he split the baby in a Solomon-like fashion. But no, I deny the logic of that because I think the logic doesn't work because the ballroom itself will be a hardened facility. At the moment, I should say it this way, if the East Wing had been left unchanged, that is an incredibly vulnerable, building, wing of the White House to attacks. And that's what the expert testimony in the record shows. So, Judge Leon here, I think, is not making a ruling that's appropriate on the facts. But even beyond that, right, and even beyond the fact that these facilities would also be very important to the continuity of government, if there were some kind of major attack on the White House in Washington, D.C. And it's obviously important that the executive branch not be destroyed, decapitated, as it were. I question whether this is a ruling that's consistent with the separation of powers. Because the judiciary is not institutionally competent, Roger, to supervise a building project. The point of the judiciary is to adjudicate rights. And if you're claiming that the government did you wrong, then you have to be someone to whom the government has done wrong. And here, I don't believe there's any constitutional or prudential standing under Article 3 of the Constitution. What we have in this group, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, is there's a single member, a woman named Allison Hoagman, who says that she lives like 2 miles or more from the White House. She drives by occasionally from the south side, where it's quite difficult to see what's going on in terms of the footprint of the former East Wing. And she says she doesn't like it architecturally, and it's aesthetically injuring to her. I think the time has come really for the Supreme Court to inquire further into this aesthetic injury concept, which really got off the ground in the 1970s and launched a lot of environmental lawsuits. And I should say, Roger, that the two divisions that I supervised of a total of 1,400 lawyers at the Justice Department, the Environment Division and the Civil Division, they're jointly defending this suit, right? So, I understand these issues intimately, both in terms of what the Civil Division does and what the Environment Division does. And, I don't see how Allison Hochman should have, standing for that. I'll give you an example of how dumb aesthetic standing.
Let me stop you there. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more of Jeff Clark.
This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
And we're back with distinguished attorney and former Department of Justice official under the Trump administration, as well as the earlier Republican administration's Jeff Clark. I do want to reiterate that I'm a high-headed Sicilian. I'm responsible for my remarks, and Jeff Clark's being a guest here does not connote in any way that he endorses or supports or even knows what I'm going to say next. So I just want to get that on the record. So before we leave the ballroom, Jeff, what's the next step here? How will this get resolved?
Well, the Justice Department has moved to get a stay from the D.C. Circuit, and they have clearly signaled that if they don't get that stay, then they're going to go to the Supreme Court. I mean, this is urgent, and you can't kind of leave a hole in the ground, as it were. I mean, that's why also, not only is there no constitutional standing to bring this case by this one woman, Allison, but I also think it's moot because the East Wing's already been demolished. So we're just going to leave it there and then leave President Trump and the executive branch at the mercy of Congress deciding to specifically authorize this project. It makes no sense. There's a clear statute. It's 3 U.S.C. 105 subsection B. It lets the president alter the White House grounds as he determines. It lets him refurnish the area as he determines. And, I think Judge Leon is just wrong in saying to the contrary. I did want to continue quickly my point about aesthetic standing, because I try to help, educate people about these kinds of things. They may think they're kind of abstract, but a lot rides on them. Yeah, our aesthetic standing doctrine at the Supreme Court level is so goofy, and at the D.C. Circuit level at this point, that if you're looking at an EPA rulemaking that regulates the car industry, the manufacturers of the cars, they have standing to sue, but the dealers don't have standing to sue, even though if the regulations increase the cost of cars, they're obviously going to sell fewer cars. They obviously have standing. But the great Judge Garland ruled to the contrary in a case a number of years back. So that's one indication of where you are. But if you compare that to Allison Hoagland here, she can drive by the White House at some distance and she could be aesthetically offended. Oh my. And she has constitutional, standing to come into the courts. No way. It's dumb. If necessary, the Supreme Court needs to revisit the standing doctrine and fix it, Roger. Yeah,
it's interesting. President Dwight Eisenhower, President Richard Nixon, President Barack Obama, all made very extensive architectural changes in the presidential complex there. But no federal judges ever blocked those. No one ever complained about them. I mean, let's face it, if Donald Trump cured cancer tomorrow, the headline would be, Trump puts oncologists out of work. I hope that the president is successful and we have a big, beautiful ballroom, which the country actually needs. Final point, we got about two.
The country needs it, Roger. And let me just say this, right? If it wasn't, he puts oncologists out of work, it would be Donald Trump cures cancer without seeking advanced express constitutional authorization from Congress first. I mean, it's just whatever Donald Trump does, the courts, many judges, it seems, want to block it. And it's something that we need to get past.
Yeah, that's, I guess, the final point. We got about just 2 minutes, but whether it is challenging birthright citizenship or immigrant detention or challenging the president's authority to trade and negotiate tariff deals with other countries, or challenging his authority to execute mass deportations of illegals, or his authority to freeze federal spending and agency actions, or whether it's targeting law firms or mail-in voting restrictions, we seem to have a wall of judicial tyranny. Now, I actually checked the Constitution. I didn't really realize this. The legislative and executive branches are actually above the judicial branch within our Constitution. So what we have here is judges gone wild. You get the final word.
Well, Roger, I do think under the Constitution, the framers use this concept of the branches are co-equal, but they're co-equal insofar as their institutional assignment under Articles 1, 2, and 3, respectively, and their institutional competence goes. And Congress delegated to the president the power to control the White House grounds for very clear reasons, which is that, he's the one living there. He's the one conducting business there. And for the judiciary to try to disturb that and then decide what they think the building project should look like, well, you can't build a ballroom segment, but you can build military installations there. It's substituting unelected judges' views for the views of the President of the United States, who's a lot more competent to decide that.
All right, we got to end it there. Thank you to our guest, Jeff Clark.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Sacco and Felix, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFilas.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.